5 of our series called Carols. So the last 4 weeks we have looked at 4 different Christmas carols, and we've pulled apart a verse or two and taken a phrase and we've expanded on it and talked about what that particularly means, what it truly means, how in-depth it is, and not to let it just be something that as we sing it's just words that come out of our mouth, but something that meditates and radiates in our hearts and minds and fills us with joy as we sing those words. So normally, after Christmas, we jump into talks about the approaching new year, right? And what lies ahead. And sometimes we do that based on the calendar, right? Like if today was January 1 or later, that's kind of where we go. But when it's still December, you kind of get in this, like, you're in this limbo. Like, where do you go? Do we wrap up some more Christmas or do we jump ahead? And I'll tell you, either one is correct. Either one is correct. I can tell you there are a number of pastors today that are going to be preaching on New Year's resolutions. Here we are right before Make the One, right? There are also ones like me today that are going to be doing a little bit more of Christmas because there is an overlap. There is an overlap, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more today. And so, we have one more carol that we're going to talk about that's pertinent to now. But instead of pulling apart one phrase, we're going to talk about the whole thing. But you might be asking what carol could be relevant after Christmas? Because so many of them are talking about leading up to the birth of Jesus and having Jesus there, and it's Christmas morning like we just sang, right? So what carol could be pertinent for after Christmas? Dean, do you have a finger at one guess?
Joy to the world.
Joy to the world is definitely one that could work, right? That's not the one that's for today, though. Any other guesses? I'll give you a hint. It has a number in it.
We Three Kings.
No.
That would be a good one as well, but not quite. That's right. That one does go perfect with it, but...
12 days of Christmas.
Yes! Exactly. That's it. The 12 days of Christmas. And that's because we are in the 12 days of Christmas. So, we're going to talk about those a little bit more. But let me give you some background on the 12 days of Christmas. So, in 567, that is like a super long time ago. In 567, the Council of Tours proclaimed the 12 days from Christmas to Epiphany as a sacred and festive season and established the duty of Advent fasting in preparation for the feast. These dozen days were tied to more than just the teaching of the Catholic Church. A host of other denominations also celebrated the 12 days of Christmas. Even in the Dark Ages, in some Eastern European churches, the 12 days of Christmas meant attending daily church services. For Christians who lived during this extremely difficult age, the 12 days were a time of rededication and renewal. That kind of goes right into the new year, right? Thus, the 12 days were considered a holy period in both coded poems and public worship. The song, published in England in 1780 without music as a chant or rhyme, is thought to be French in origin. The melodies of collected versions of the carol vary throughout history. The standard tune now associated with it is derived from a 1909 arrangement of a traditional folk melody by English composer Frederick Austin. Though modern people try to reduce this to just a silly song, the original poem, written by Catholic clerics, transformed into a carol at a time when celebrating the 12 days of Christmas was one of the most important holiday customs. By understanding the meaning of why the clerics chose what they did for each day, the carol can be fully understood. So, I'm a little nervous. Enjoy and laugh, because it's healthy to laugh, because Janae and I are going to make glorious fools of ourselves in this rendition of the carol. You ready? I figured after all the things that I make y'all do, games and activities, and I challenge your brains, it's my turn to do something, right? So, here we go. You know, long song, right? Like, because you're just literally building all the way up and all the way back down. It definitely goes on and on and on, but there's a reason for it. So, whew, breathe. So, like I said, over the course of the series, we've been pulling a carol, right? And so, today is this one, but instead of breaking down one phrase, we're actually going to talk about the meaning of each of those days. All right, so, are you ready? Number one, that partridge in a pear tree. Anybody want to guess what that stands for? What it means? What do you think, Chase?
A bird in a pear tree.
It is a bird in a pear tree. You're right, it is. So, here's the thing. When this was written by those clerics, they wanted something memorable to help explain different key points that as Christians we should be familiar with. So, in this case, when they're talking about that partridge in a pear tree, it represents Jesus. Christ is symbolically presented as the mother partridge, the only bird that will die to protect its young. So Christ. Number two, those turtle doves. Anybody want to guess what this stands for or represents?
Father and Son.
Say that again?
Father and Son.
Okay. So Father and Son, Mary and Joseph. Not quite.
Peace.
Nope. The twin birds represent the Old and New Testament. The doves are the biblical roadmap that is available to everyone. So you have the whole Bible that is encased in the two turtle doves. Old and New Testament. 3 French hens. Why in the world do we have 3 French hens? The birds represent the 3 things we find in 1 Corinthians 13 of faith, hope, and love. It also represents the Trinity of God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Number 4, those 4 calling birds that never can seem to get a connection. It's like Verizon where you're walking around. Can you hear me now? Right? These birds represent the 4 Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Does that make sense? Right? It's kind of time. Things are, you're like, whoa, right? It's kind of clicking, right? All right, 5 gold rings. Yes, it is listed up there, right? This one's a little easier. So these rings, they represent the first 5 books of the Old Testament, also known as the Torah or the Pentateuch. So if you've watched The Chosen, they talk a lot about the Torah. This is these 5 books. They were written by Moses. So it's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Number 6, those geese are laying. What in the world are these geese doing? These 6 geese go back to the very beginning, with each representing a day of creation or a day that was hatched. It doesn't include the day of rest because nothing was hatched that day. So you have the 6 working days of creation. Number 7, those swans. This one may be tricky, but these 7 represent the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit known as prophecy, ministry, teaching, exhortation, giving, leading, and compassion. Spiritual gifts. Number 8, those maids a milking. This number represents something pretty special. As Christ came to save the lowest of the low, this gift represents the ones who would receive his word and accept his grace. Being a milkmaid was about the worst job one could have in England during this period, much like the shepherds were when Jesus was born. This conveyed that Jesus cared as much about servants as he did those of royal blood. But these 8 in particular, they represent the 8 Beatitudes found in Matthew 5. Those Beatitudes start with, blessed are, right? Blessed are the poor in spirit, those. Number 9, ladies dancing. These represent the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. 10. As lords were often judges and in charge of the law, the leaping fellas represent the 10 Commandments. 11. This one also may seem a little tricky, but it represents the 11 faithful disciples. These were the ones that carried out the gospel message. 12. This one is related to the Catholic Church as a whole. It stands for the 12 points of doctrine in the Apostles' Creed. This is a traditional creed that is still resided among Christians in various churches. There are lots of churches today that still recite this. Most of them are liturgical churches. We are not typically liturgical in nature. I did print the Apostles' Creed for you. We have said it before, but very rarely do we do it here in our service. But it's those 12 points that we all follow. It's that main doctrine. Does that make sense? So, did you know that the 12 days of Christmas had a specific meaning like this? No, I mean, like I said, most of us just think about it being a silly song, right? But it really means so much more. Every piece of it biblical in nature and the reasons why it's there. It's pretty cool, right? When you think about it. So here we are. We've listed off the 12 days of Christmas. And you know, we sit here on the 4th day. Because you start counting on the 26th. That's day 1. So today is the 4th day of Christmas. It's representing those 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But what do we do with this information? And why are there only 12 days? Why isn't there 13 or 20? Why 12? Here's the deal, is it goes along with Epiphany. It's 12 days that we count starting after Christmas all the way to Epiphany. But what's the deal with Epiphany anyway? Why are we even counting down to it? Most of us have not been kept up at night wondering about Epiphany. That's just not something that typically is burdensome on in our thoughts there. A large number of people have never even heard of Epiphany. Are you one of those? Okay, a couple of you are like, I don't know what Epiphany is. Exactly. Most people don't know what Epiphany is. Epiphany may not seem significant to us, but in other places of the world, it's highly celebrated. The U.S. is not one. But in other places of the world, it is highly celebrated. Epiphany falls on January 6th each year. None of our Christmas stuff is allowed to come down in our house until at least January 6th. It has to stay up. It can come down anytime after that. Sometimes it stays up through February, but that's just when we're crazy busy, right? So, January 6th is the minimum when anything can come down in my house. That's just how we've always rolled because of Epiphany. We're supposed to have our 12 drummers drumming that day, and it's commonly the day we remember as the arrival of the wise men in Bethlehem, right? We have that spaced out portion to signify that they didn't arrive the night that Jesus was born, that it was actually a couple years later when they encountered him. But in Germany and many other places around the world, children dress up as kings and they travel door to door like we do on Halloween, but instead of collecting candy for themselves, they collect for the poor, remembering that the wise men brought gifts to the poor child, Christ. Wouldn't that be fun? Start a new tradition around here on January 6th, dress up as kings and go door to door. Canned goods, change, anything, right? And give to the poor. The more we talk about Epiphany, the more we may realize that we're missing something. Epiphany in the early church was one of the great feast days, second only to Easter in its importance. That's kind of crazy, right? Because here we are, we know Easter, great, everybody celebrates big feast, and then Epiphany, and we get lost. But in the early church, it was the second one of importance. The third great feast was Pentecost, another one that seems to get lost here. These were the three great feasts. No one even celebrated Christmas until the 4th century. So what happened? Why is it so unimportant now? The word Epiphany means manifestation or revelation. The wise men are celebrated on Epiphany because they represent the revelation of Jesus to the Gentiles. It also celebrated the revelation of Jesus' first miracle of changing water into wine at Cana, and the manifestation of Jesus as the Son of God at his baptism. Those three things lumped together symbolize the revelation of God and Jesus Christ. Do you get that? Do you hear what I just said? Those three things. We have the wise men taking note, coming from afar, pointing out the prophecy that this is something. He is something, right? And number two, the first miracle, the wedding at Cana. People seeing it. And then number three, the announcing at his baptism with the doves coming down and God saying, "This is my son." These three things pointed directly to who Christ was. The baby being born in a manger was relatively unimportant compared with the events that proved to the world who that baby was. Epiphany was the church's way of saying, we can never be the same. So why doesn't anything epiph on Epiphany anymore? Because we no longer expect it. This is what happens. We no longer expect it. We no longer expect God to be revealed in our midst. Then we expect stores to start giving away merchandise. Because we don't expect it, we only get what we expect. The early church was full of excitement and expectation. They anticipated the return of Jesus at any time, and the persecutions they endured forced them to be aware of their faith. We've lost that excitement. In the early church, the point of Epiphany was not to remember history, but to be reminded that God appears miraculously to us in places and ways that we don't expect it. If we remember that God thrives on unexpected appearances and we expect to see him, we're not likely to miss what's going on around us. For example, the wedding at Cana was crowded, lots of people, but there were only a few who witnessed the miracle. The others missed an event that has been talked about for thousands of years. A lot of them could walk away and say, yeah, I was there, but I didn't see it. The birth in Bethlehem in a manger was only witnessed by a handful of shepherds. The rest missed the event that would change the world. And how crowded was Bethlehem? So crowded there was no room. So as we head into this new year, approaching Epiphany. Where is your heart, soul, and mind? Are you excited and expecting to see him all around you? Or is this just another dull beginning year? If we want anything to epiph in our lives, we had better begin by expecting it and watching for it. If you're expecting company in your home, you're not going to miss their arrival, right? You're not going to miss them unless they are purposely sneaking up on you, which that occasionally is fun to do also. But you're not going to miss them, right? We make preparations for their coming. We listen for the doorbell or a knock. Or we look out the window and see if they've arrived yet. We expect them. Do we expect God when we prepare for our day, every day? Do we expect him? Do we ask him to be revealed in our coworkers, or in traffic, or in a random encounter? Do we prepare for church by asking God to speak to us in the music or through someone at church? Do we honestly expect a real life-changing encounter with God when we walk through these doors? Or is this just a routine? Is this just something to do? Most people who do expect those things find them. If we're not expecting company, we might be home or asleep. If we don't expect God to speak or touch our hearts, if we're not looking and listening for him, we're going to miss him. We'll be like those wedding guests, right there, but missing it. We all meet God in different ways and at different times and places. He might be in the face of a homeless man, or at the funeral home, or in the delivery room. The message of Epiphany is that the revelation of God is talking about more than a one-shot deal. It's not that he came once and that was it. We have Easter, right? A day when God blew the lid off everyone's ideas of what God could and could not do or be. The message of Epiphany is that God is not dead. He is alive, skipping here, there, and everywhere, hoping we might take notice. The message of Epiphany is keep watch, for we don't know the hour or the day he might appear. No one can force you to have an encounter with Jesus. Can't do it. Your spirit has to be willing. But God is already here to be encountered by you. Right here in the pews, in the music, in the parking lot. Everything we do in service is meant to be a structured time that encourages us to take note and see the God who is here in our midst. So as we head into this new year, may you have an epiphany. May you live expecting to see him. As we sing our closing song this morning, again, it's a Christmas one. Sing it expectantly. Be looking and listening.